here in Frankfurt at BRAFA in the Galleries. Come in.
Be welcome. What a wonderful situation to welcome you here at Die Galerie in Frankfurt in Germany, instead of being in Brussels, where we should be today to open BRAFA, but we are opening BRAFA in the Galleries, and I welcome you very, very much. It's very nice that you came. May I introduce our gallery manager, Mrs. Elke Mohr. She will take over.
Thank you. Close your eyes and you can imagine we are in Brussels, in this wonderful city with the Grand Place in bright winter sunlight, with the wonderful museums of Brussels, with Brafa Art Fair in the tour and taxis halls, with glamour and blinking of all those wonderful exhibits, the jewelry, the furniture, the artwork.
Cheers. This is an English sparkling made by a very good friend of mine, Mr. Stephen Spurrier. He planted 10 years ago in Dorset, English sparkling wine, and we have this instead of champagne today, but it is the same quality, probably even better. Yes, this is a painting by Corneille, a very good friend of mine whom I met many, many years ago, and we traveled together. We visited his house in Macerata in Italy. We stayed there. He spent the summer there always, and I came from my house in Tuscany across the hills and to his house in Macerata, and stayed at his house, and he painted. And at the end of my stay with him, we went also to the Surrealist, to the opera festival in Macerata, for instance. At the end of the stay, I purchased a few paintings from him and took them back home to my Tuscan house, and then back to Frankfurt and to my gallery. This was something we really loved every year. We traveled to Africa once, and of course I visited him often in Paris, in his studio in Paris, or in Amsterdam, where he had also a different studio. He was a lovely, lively young man, I must say, full of enthusiasm and full of joy of life. And I think you can see this in his painting, the joy of life he had. As CoBrA is one of the strong points of Die Galerie, with all the artists of the CoBrA group, I'd just like to come back one more minute to Corneille. I said when we came to his studio, but his studio in Paris was very strange. He had a studio in Clignancourt, and when it was filled up with paintings, with his African collection, with graphics and drawings, etc., he closed it down by key and left it, and took the new studio. The next one was in Rue Vieille du Temple, and the same thing happened there. After 5 or 6 years, it was filled up with art, with his fantastic African collection, for instance, and with paintings and everything he collected. And he closed the studio and moved to the next one, which was in Rue d'Aromée, east of Saint-Antoine. And that way he had a very, very beautiful studio, and I even slept once or twice in there. It was very nice. Anyway, CoBrA. This is a fantastic painting by Karel Appel, also one of the founders of CoBrA Group. I had the pleasure to meet him, not very often, and the friendship was not as strong as it was with Corneille, but we met in Tuscany because Karel Appel had a very, very beautiful house near San Casciano, which is not very far away from my house in Tuscany. So only 50 miles or something like this. So Karel Appel was a very powerful, very strong man, different to the childish young Corneille. And this beautiful painting called Begging Children. In this room we show some of the highlights of our BRAFA in the Gallery presentation. Here we have Lucio Fontana, for instance, a rare green painting, large painting, with, just like Karel Appel, with scratches, painted scratches on the surface. Or Max Ernst, one of our surrealistic painters, another strong point of the program of Die Galerie. We represent and work with artists like Max Ernst, André Masson, Roberto Matta, just to name a few of the surrealistic painters we work with. Follow me. Follow me.
This room is dedicated to some of the very and absolute highlights in our presentation and from our collection. Green, as the color of hope and of confidence, is omnipresent here. You see some very, very famous sculptures around. It is André Masson's bronze L'Extase, a very surrealistic piece with his subject of love and of strong expression of ecstasy. In the middle you see Constantin Brancusi's famous sculpture Princesse X from 1916, and at the right side a wonderful and great plaster, so a unique sculpture by the Italian Marino Marini, dated in 1947.
I had the pleasure to meet Lily Masson, the first daughter of André Masson, some many years ago, and also Diego and Louis Masson, the two sons of André Masson with his second wife. And we developed a very kind, very nice and intensive friendship. Lily passed away, unfortunately, recently at the age of 98. And Diego is still a composer and conductor for music, and we do intensively work with the family and the work of Father André Masson. Now we go. Follow me.
Peter, do you remember the story behind these paintings?
Of course, we traveled to Holland. We went to Bergen aan Zee to visit Lucebert.
It was a fantastic trip. We planned to exhibit Lucebert, the Dutch CoBrA member, here at Die Galerie, and we took the chance to see his studio. Lucebert already has died in 1994, but his widow, Tony Swanswyk, kept the heritage and the memory of the artist fantastically. So we went to Bergen and saw the house which Lucebert built in the 1960s, soon after he could afford, because before he lived in really very, very poorness, and he only started his career as a painter. He drawed before, of course, these times. And so we came to his house and saw the furniture and all the paintings and his studio, which was as if he was still alive. It was fantastic. The drawings on the desk, a painting and the easel, the printer's press in the center of the room, all the paintings standing around. And we had the very, very great chance to create and to curate an exhibition here for the gallery, and had all help from Tony. Tony passed away meanwhile too, but the friendship remained, and meanwhile we work with the third generation already, with Meyer Bursma, the grandson of Lucebert, who takes care of the heritage and who presides the Lucebert Foundation, which also now is within this house, and uses this house as an artist in residence house for young artists. So it was a wonderful connection, and I really remember very, very well this visit.
This was very nice because we came into the studio and really it looked as if we had just gone out to have a cup of coffee outside. Everything was, the paint was wet, the drawings were there, his brushes were there, and it was a very, very nice experience, quite exciting.
In this room we show the absolute favorite of paintings of Lucebert, which I love and I love since years. It is a work called Dance of the Infidels. And you see it here. It is a real danse macabre, a dance of witches, of demons, and of grotesque figures. And it shows a lot of the life experience and philosophy of Lucebert, who was a very well-known and famous poet before he turned to painting. Throughout his whole life he did drawings, and he joined the CoBrA group also because he was a good drawer. But this painting is a real danse macabre of witches, of grotesque figures, half human beings, half animals, and they come towards us as a visitor and they grab us and try to catch us. And this was the life experience also of Lucebert. He always focuses a lot on the eyes. They are staring at you, they are focusing you, and they are bringing you in the center of the piece. So you have to dance with the dance of the infidels, and they are omnipresent.
Well, we go to the next painting, another CoBrA artist from Denmark, Asger Jorn, one of the most important artists in the group. And also here you have eyes, just you had them on Lucebert, but this is a painting from 1937. This was a long time before CoBrA. But he joined CoBrA and he was founding member of the group also in 1949. And of course Pierre Alechinsky, the last still living painter of the group. Fantastic person, incredibly person, a lovely person. Whenever I have time and come to Paris, I try to see him. And there was one beautiful story. My wife and myself, we were invited at 11 o'clock in the morning to see him and to visit his studio in Bougival. And we arrived and we started talking and talking and talking, and he showed us paintings and he drew them out of his cupboards and he showed them. He was enthusiastic, and we of course were enthusiastic. About 12:30, when we were supposed to leave already, his wife came up and said, "Would you like to stay for lunch?" So we stayed for lunch and had a beautiful lunch at his home, and finally, after 4 hours of staying with Pierre Alechinsky, we had to leave, unfortunately, because we had other appointments in the afternoon. It has become quite a nice, friendly friendship, him and us. And this is a very nice, beautiful painting, an earlier one, with all the lightness, easiness, and joy of his kind of paintings.
Carl-Henning Pedersen, this painter, was a member of the CoBrA group as well, one of the older generation, together with Asger Jorn from the Danish side. And he has a very, very positive behavior and positive life experience. And I got an idea from this when I traveled to Moulins. This is in the most western part of Burgundy in France, where Carl-Henning has a house which he in the 1970s bought from Karel Appel. And the trip to this house was fantastic because it gave me an idea of the whiteness and brightness. When you approach to Moulins, you cross a very, very flat plain with agriculture plain, and you finally after a long, long journey, you get to a very, very small village with a manor beneath a church. And here, Carl-Henning Pedersen used to live half of the year besides Copenhagen, where he had another house and studio. And his widow, Sitze Ramson, the second wife, took me, and together with her we prepared an exhibition here for the gallery. And this was wonderful because she was perfectly prepared. She showed me hundreds of paintings, and I had the great chance to select the very best from them. And so the cooperation with Sitze always is a pleasure, and we have a very, very friendly contact. And the house and this manor also bears the spirit of Carl-Henning, who is called the Chagall of the North. You see it here a little bit because of the blue color, also because of the symbols he uses in all of his paintings. The birds, the flowers, the lovers, the sun, and sometimes also ships, which are symbols for northern myths, which he occupied himself with a lot. I did not have the chance to meet him personally, but through his wife, Sitze, I got a lot of his ideas, and I got a very good expression or impression of what Carl-Henning thinks and what he paints.
In one of the rooms of our young artists. Alain, born 1941. He's one of our young artists, and he's full of life. And he originally came from figurative art. He's able to paint, to make beautiful portraits, for instance, of his wife Elisabeth, and then transformed from the figurative art into a kind of abstract art, which is where you can still see elements of figuration. Here you would see a dancing couple, for instance. Here you see women standing on a bridge. It is very beautiful to find friends. Alain lives in Nîmes, in the southern part of France, and whenever I go there, they are very hospitable, they are very kind. We go to the market and buy cheese because I'm a half vegetarian, and I bring cheese back, French cheese of course, back into Germany. And Elisabeth makes a fantastic lunch or dinner, and we speak together. Alain is a very competent and very intelligent, he used to be a professor at one of the schools of fine art, and he has a lot of things to say. And of course, he has the talent of combining colors. He is able to combine colors in a very positive and very harmonic way.
Peter, working with your young artists is also a very good chance for us as collaborators and for the team getting known those artists. So I remember very well Alain's last visit here in Frankfurt during his exhibition. He came with the whole family, including his dog, and the dog strolled around, and he was very comfortable and very familiar here in our rooms. And so this is always joy having those artists here in Frankfurt and having dinner with them and getting known to them very privately and and personally. So yeah, we enjoy very much this chance.
One of the highlights of of our work, being a gallerist, is bringing the two ends together. On the one side, the artist, who are individuals, who are strong personalities, who have a fantastic knowledge sometimes of art history and the past. And on the other side, the clients who are able and who are willing and who are interested to purchase a painting like this Johannes Heisig painting, for instance, which was supposed to hang on the main wall of our stand at BRAFA in the Tour und Taxis premises. Unfortunately, we are not in Brussels today, but we love to be there, I can promise, I can assure you. Anyway, Johannes Heisig is an East German artist, comes from an artist family. His father was artist, his brother was artist, and his first wife was an artist. And he is just a typical example for a well-educated, knowledgeable person who takes from history everything he can and changes and brings it into his own art.
And this is a real eye-catcher of Johannes Heisig. Its title is Vertreibung ins Paradies, that is the refuge into the paradise, not from the paradise, but in the paradise. And you see a beach scenery, a very relaxed and very harmonious and sensitive beach scene. So I like the piece very much, and I could imagine that the Belgian visitors would have loved it as well as we do. Peter, you know Johannes much better than we do, because you often see him and you visit all his exhibitions and his museum exhibitions. Tell us something about the artist.
He used to live in Berlin, of course, when I met him, and when we took over as his main gallery all his works, we had the pleasure, my wife and myself had the pleasure to be portrayed by him. You must know that he has portrayed 7 times Willy Brandt, for instance, the German Chancellor. So it was an honor for us when he asked us if he could make a portrait of my wife Stefania and myself. And he did. We went 6 or 7 times in his studio and sat there for 3 hours and talked, but we were not allowed to move too much. And he took started with the charcoal on the canvas and step by step developed this fantastic large portrait of Stefania and myself, which now hangs in our home in Frankfurt am Main.
Peter, there's a very funny story in this painting, because Johannes painted the couple many times sitting on a sofa or a chair, and in the very last moment Johannes painted a handy mobile phone in Peter's hand, and this is a very good characterization of Peter, because he is hanging on the phone all the day, and it's very typical for him.
I didn't know this. When I left the studio together with my wife after the last sitting, I did not have a mobile phone in my hand, and when the painting finally arrived in Frankfurt, I suddenly had the mobile phone in my hand. I said, Johannes, what have you done?
Here you see 2 wonderful bouquets of flowers, brand new. You can smell the oil color paint still, and they are really very fresh. In my opinion, they are more beautiful than a real bouquet of flowers can be, and showing the very typical and fantastic technique Johannes has, because he has a lot of paint and a lot of pasto on the canvas, and it is fresh and it's very expressive. What especially fascinates in the work of Johannes Heisig, I think it is some paintings give more questions than answers. They are not readable in a minute, but you can see a lot of different themes and subjects and ideas in the painting, like the one which is called Zündeln, that means setting fire, and you see a starting fire on the right edge of this painting. It is so different and so complex. It has large figures, small figures, it has a pastelous, almost abstract surface, as well as very soft and smooth and flat things, and it really has a lot where you can reflect and to think about, and you get a little bit reflective looking on such a painting, and the more you look on it, the more reflective you become.
In any case, what a beautiful possibility to present to you my gallery, Die Galerie in Frankfurt in Germany. To have the possibility to talk to you and to give you a message regarding our friendships to different artists over 43 years of my business, my gallery. And to explain the exciting possibility to bring together two ends, as I said before, the artist and the artist on one side and the clients on the other side, to bring them together and to give joy and love and happiness to both of them, since we sell their art and since we make customers happy with that what we give to them. It's an exciting job and very exciting thing, and Brafa Art Fair gave us the possibility to present ourselves here and the friendship to our artists here, instead of being in Brussels, which is our beloved Brafa, which is our beloved art fair in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sehr gespannt.
Wunderbar. Also, tschüss. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.